Can't talk, that's all right. You look nice. So tell me, what are you going to do with this guy?
I'm going to keep him.
You're not going to throw me back, huh?
He is a great companion.
There you go.
Grew up.
Yeah, where did you grow up?
I was born on DeMumford Street in Nashville, Tennessee. I can't remember, I think it was, the house is still there. We lived there because Daddy could walk to work right over the railroad. And I used to remember that number. I think it's 301. I'm going to guess at that.
Okay, now tell me how you ended up, you were telling me earlier about the Army, how you got into the Army. Talk about that.
Well, when the Army broke out and we sold papers that Japan had bombed Pearl Harbor, I decided to quit school and go to the service. And I quit in 1942, October of 1942. I played a football game on Friday night and left to go to the service on Monday morning. I can't remember the exact date, but they called us the Galloping Ghost because it was on Halloween month, and it wasn't on Halloween night. But the other guard and I led interference for his brother and went 98 yards for a touchdown. So on Monday morning I left and went to Tullahoma, Tennessee, and was inducted into the Air Force.
And where'd you go from there? Talk about it.
From there, they put us on a train and sent us to a little base down in Florida called Tyndall Field. And it didn't even have a basic training camp, which we hadn't had. And we had to work with them draining the swamps and make a camp. And we made a basic training camp. And while we was draining all and cleaning the trash, they were building buildings. And we didn't know what to name it. But the whole time we built it, we had skunks and we had rattlesnakes. The skunks were on out. It's right today called Skunk Hollow Training Camp. And it's still there. But we had skunk runs down through the mess hall every morning. That's why we had the skunk party in it. Well, I went through basic training there, and then I went up to the main airport to mechanic school. But I stayed at Keesler Field for approximately 8 months and went back to Tyndall Field as line chief again. And after gunnery school, I was signed to a base for combat duty and formation flying out of Lincoln, Nebraska. And during that time, we helped make a movie. We flew combat formation for them called Wing Victory. And our B-24s flew that formation for them. And from there, I was shipped to England on a ship. They took our plane away from us. I won't tell why, but they took it away and put us on a boat.
Wait, go back. Did you crash that plane?
No,
Oh, okay.
No, we didn't crash it. I'll tell you what we did. Beer in the mess hall was much cheaper if you was an enlisted man. So all the officers put on our enlisted shirts, and we all went and had a party at the PX, buying beer at $1/4 a pitcher full. And they caught the officers, and they took our plane away from us that was already loaded. We didn't have uniforms or nothing. They put us on a boat and sent us to England with no change of uniform or anything.
So when you got into England, you told me about those guys that were skinning the GIs for the money on the...
Well, you could buy all this stuff from the boat PX that you wanted. We bought cigarettes and had a bunch of old Raleigh cigarettes they wanted to get rid of. They gave us. And I started watching these guys throw the cigarettes off on the dock to the guys on the dock. When I saw the American soldier going action and fighting for them too, I thought, well, I better keep them. There must be something to it. Well, we found that cigarettes on the black market over there would bring a fortune. And we saved them and just sold them on the black market on the street. Got a little money. We went into London, and on the outskirts of London, we went to a base and had to change our money, and we had a crew already set up, all of us. Had all 10 of us went in there. Well, all of my men went to the finance and got their money changed. They came back and told me, 2 or 3 of them did, that they think they were rooked, that they didn't get all the money that they were supposed to get. Well, I counted what they told me they turned in and took them back down there and got the finance officer, and I told him, I said, my men got rooked. And I showed him what they did and all. Well, they gave us the money. Well, we went on and got on a train and had to stop in London. When we stopped, the MPs were there looking for me. Said I'd messed the government out of money when we was exchanging. Well, Glasser took over. He told them, says, I know the boy. He told me what they had done. Said he didn't ship them. Said something fun is going on here. Said I want these boys paroled to me. I'll be responsible for them. The ones that turned in the money and Pitts that y'all arrested. Well, we went on to Italy. It was signed our plane and everything, and Glasser took care of it. He came into the tent one day and told us, said, well, y'all got 3 guys sent to the prison. Said the finance officer and the 2 guys that y'all were dealing with are in Leavenworth now for stealing money from all the American soldiers that came through there. Well, that was a good thing. It got off of my records. I didn't have it.
Now tell me, who was Glasser?
Harold Glasser was the bombardier on our crew, and he was an attorney from New York City. Worked for Kaiser Roth. And at Kaiser Roth, he was given the duty of running the Miss America, Miss Universe, and one other one, wasn't it?
USA.
USA, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And
that's a great story. So when D-Day happened, where were you? Talk about it.
D-Day was while we was on the boat going over. It happened then.
How did you hear about it? Talk about it.
I didn't hear a whole lot about it until we got to our base, and we'd already gone in and been signed. We went in through Africa into Italy, and then the plane came and picked us up, took us to our base and signed us our plane. We went into a tent that had all the bombs painted on the edge of the tent of what missions had gone on. None of them was past the 13th mission. And the ground crew man that was helping us get situated said that that's when they were shot out. And that nobody in that tent had ever made it past the 13th mission. So we made up our mind that night that we wasn't going to paint no bombs and fill them in, that we was going to break that jinx. And we never did mention it again. And then they came through the quarters and telling us about the D-Day invasion that it did. So we didn't know a whole lot about it except that they'd had a big invasion and that it went well.
Yeah, they couldn't talk about it, could they? Yeah, did you hear Eisenhower talking?
No, the only one we heard talking on the radio over there was Axis Sally. And she was telling us she was going to be shot down that day, and said, you guys in the 781st and all said, you're going to take off today and you're going to be shot down. They'd tell whoever was flying that day. She had more information than we had. And we didn't pay no attention to it.
Yeah, talk about your first few missions that you flew.
Well, the first mission to us was sort of like a milk run. wasn't a whole lot went on it. The second mission was pretty rough. We didn't even put our flak suits on the first one, but after we got on that second one and saw it popping around us, we put on the flak suits and the helmets and everything. And it was pretty scary for a bunch of little young country boys anyway. And we didn't know really what it was because it didn't hit our plane. But we found out on missions later on that it could kill you.
That photograph you gave me of that B-24 going down in flames, talk about that.
Well, that happened because of the photographer in our squadron was shot down in somebody's plane, and they didn't have a photographer. And Johnny told them that he didn't mind them putting a camera in our plane, and that his engineer was all over the plane and would take shots if he could, when he could. So I had a big camera in the escape hatch in the waist, and a little hand camera in both the flight deck and the waist. And as I was going around, if something happened, just like some flak shots I had, I wanted them to show people what flak was. And planes go down, I just happened to catch them. And they happen to be some of the hottest ones in the war, because it's in Time, Saturday Evening Post, and all those magazines. So they let me slip some negatives out when I came home. The war was still going on, so they couldn't let me have them. And we slipped them in my writing folder, and I promised them I wouldn't develop them till after the war, at which time I did. But I took several planes that were shot down that hit the big papers back home and the magazine. But we didn't say who shot them or anything.
Yeah, did you know any of those boys on any of them?
I didn't know them. That's some from my squadron. So you didn't get too close to other crews on account of that. It'd be buddies and all, and that's about all. And I did have one crew that I volunteered to fly with. The boy I knew, he was from Memphis, and we'd got to know each other and talked about Tennessee. And he was sick and couldn't fly, and his pilot just flat refused to fly because his engineer was gone. And he said he wouldn't fly unless I'd go with him. And he knew me. So I flew that day. And when we landed, my whole crew was at the end of the runway waiting and told me, he said, "Don't you ever do that again."
Okay, tell me about, do you remember VE Day? Were you in Europe then?
I wasn't in Europe. I was home on a 45-day leave. And I heard about it because it was going down the streets of Nashville that the war was over. Roosevelt died on the way home on the ship, and VE Day was while I was home on leave. And I went back for 45 days, after 45 days, to a rest camp. And if you had so many points you could get out, like 85, and I had plenty. And at 85, I said, I'm ready to go. I'm not ready to go back. I want out.
Tell me about your missions. How many were there?
Well, to talk about a mission, you got off if you did 35 sorties. Now, you might fly a mission and not get credit. You might fly a mission that was really tough and get a credit for a sortie. If it was something light, you might not even get credit for it. You just flew it. Plus that Johnny was promoted to squadron commander, and he had to fly all of the weather missions to see if the weather was bad, whether they could fly that day or not. When he did, I flew as his engineer and his copilot. So that, I can't count all. Probably 60, 65 missions counting them. But I had 35 sorties easy. And I counted up to that high, and I went ahead and took my time out, got my discharge. So they sent me to Santa Ana, California for rest camp. so I'd get my thoughts all back together. Now, if I'd have married me, they'd have sent me to Miami, Florida, to the beach with my wife and paid her way. But I wasn't ready to get married. Well, see, I went to that rest camp for 45 days, and that was wonderful. I could call, and they'd bring a car up there with golf clubs. I could go play golf or go do whatever I wanted to. The only thing I remember is how nice that place was, and that they was really taking care of us, getting our body acclimated to getting back into civilian life and getting us thinking different and thinking war and shooting and all that. And so when I got on the plane, I was a civilian, and that's what I turned out to be. I was already discharged from the service, had my kick-out pay. I was headed home. That's all I can remember.
All right, there you go. And you all met a long time ago, right? How long have you been married?
22 years.
Talk about that.
That's what he wants you to talk about. He don't want me to talk about it.
You don't have to talk about it if you don't. I'm just trying to get something about you, too.
Oh, well, you know, I just feel like that we were meant to be together. I think that I was sent on this trip to Europe to be with my friend who had just lost her husband. And I had no idea that I would meet anyone that I had any romantic interest in. But he came and sat with me a while, and we got a little better acquainted throughout the trip, and came home and dated for a year and married. And I just believe it's a divine connection.
Let me ask you, is he ever mean to you?
No. He can, his biggest drawback is backseat driving. It's going to cause me to have a wreck one of these days.
I can't stand that. That's so good.